Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. The Rift is refreshed and ready for our next game of the day. G2 Esports versus 1907 Fenerbahce. With picks and bans right around the corner, here are the players fighting for the win on the Rift. Let's start on the blue side. It is going to be G2 Esports. That means it's Expect in the top lane. Trick roaming around in the jungle. Perks controlling the mid. Sven at bot with Mithy. Right in his back pocket is his support as always. Young Buck as coach for picks and bans.
And their opponents for this game on the other side of the Rift, we have 1907 Fenerbahce. In the top lane, Thaldrin. In the jungle, Crash. Mid laner Frozen, who has been outstanding. And the bot lane duo going to be Padden and Japone. With coach Serdar Perez.
I like it. I like it.
I tried my best. I'm not gonna give you anything more than that.
And there are just flashbacks right now for many European fans. Like we remember last year, Alvis Nox Luna versus G2. Everyone was expecting G2 to be the favorites, but you can never quite count out these teams when it comes to this level of competition.
That's right, and while the TCL champions are considered an underdog in this group, they did show some promising plays in the early game versus Royal Never Give Up, a team that obviously is going to hit pretty hard.
Yeah, I think especially people are expecting Padden to get slammed in lane against Uzi, right? Through the play-ins, they had really struggled in lane, but then they went pretty much even in that laning phase, which was very impressive. And I think that Crash has been playing extremely aggressive. He is someone who can look to be a playmaker for this team. And if Fenerbahce can get to the teamfight stage of the game with Frozen and with Padden in a good spot, they could look to deal some damage here to G2.
Ezreal Rakan taking out a little bit of that early game Crash craziness from Ezreal. No Japone Rakan initiations. Kalista Alistar being taken out to take the cow away from Mithy. Keeps his head out of the game in the early stages.
It's important to remember both these teams are searching for their first win. And yes, it is only their second game of the groups, but because this is such an incredibly difficult group that they are in, they need to be able to pick up wins early and often if you want to be able to get out of groups. I mean, you're going up against Samsung. There are heavy favorites in this group. Most people are not expecting to get a win against them, or if they do, at best, maybe one. And then you have RNG, you have G2, you have 1907 Fenerbahce, and if they can steal a game off of G2, that could really hurt G2's chances of getting out of the group.
Possible first pick, Aurelia, not gonna happen. Lulu getting locked in here. The Janna not banned either, as the Zaya was a final from 1907 Fenerbahce. They will be looking to start something off on their side, possibly the AD carry and that jungle.
My problem with this sort of pick ban, when you actually allow the Lulu to go over, is a first pick like this, and you haven't banned out a Janna or anything for G2, you're now giving over the top priority jungler as well as the top priority AD carry, and they're still able to get an ultra high priority support as their third pick for the Janna. So I don't love the way that G2 has actually gone through this. No, it does not mean that they are at a massive disadvantage all of a sudden, but I do think it hurts their chances somewhat because it's giving Fenerbahce essentially first pick of two roles, as well as, you know, a pick that I think goes even or maybe even his advantage in the Janna in the later stages of the game.
Yeah, I think as well, when you think back to the playing stages, Pan, he had a very impressive Cogmore game too. Thinking back to their performance, where they were in a 3 versus 5 fight. And Padden was still able to come out on top with a very impressive support play from Thaldrin as well. And I feel like that, especially when you look at team fights and when you look at Cogmore as a champion and the value he adds later on to the game, this could be a big comfort pick for 1907 Fenerbahce, and I'm excited to see what they're able to do with it against the powerhouse of G2.
The one thing I will say, despite the fact that Padden and Japone went even against RNG's bot lane, they did have the advantageous bot lane. They were playing with the Thunderlord's Lulu. G2 has one of the strongest bot lanes, if not the strongest, in the West with Sven and Mithy. And if they are the ones who have the advantageous bot lane, they could look to really punish Padden. As we have seen, he's been able to be punished in the play-in stage. So that's somewhere that they could really look to attack, bring down Trick, try to focus these guys and put him behind before Padden can get to that comfortable spot where he can take over a team fight.
And it's very easy to do that when you have a Tristana Lulu. We've seen that be a very comfortable big power duo in the bottom lane, and in the hands of Sven and Mithy, you expect nothing but pressure to come out from the European superstars as we move into the second half of the draft.
And hopefully they don't go too late in the game. Those first 3 picks from 1907 Fenerbahce were the same exact ones for Misfits that they used very late into the game in that Kog'Maw, Sejuani, and Janna. Cho'Gath going in for Thaldrin as the captain in the top lane, can make calls from the Void champion.
Now, this is interesting. We'll see if Expect is actually going to go for the Trundle, which would be the second time in 2 games, but before that, we had not seen it at all.
Yeah.
Because to me, it looks like 1907 Fenerbahce is trying to push them towards a Maokai. When you have the Cho'Gath picked up, when you look at the bans targeted at the top lane, they don't seem to be worried about that. Maokai very much, so we'll see if Expect actually wants to go for something a little bit more lane dominant, which I would think would be a very good idea. We saw how effective it was just last game for Alphari. This would give them advantages in both top and bot lane. So unless Frozen can really get an advantage in the mid lane, things are starting to look pretty good for G2.
You could look at something like a Cassio for Frozen, a champion that in the past was very well known for going pretty even up against the Rise, and I think that it's also a big comfort pick for him in the middle lane as well. But I feel like that you heard Max Law talking about how at breakfast they all sit together, they all talk about the performance that they've been having through Worlds. I also think they've all been talking about Trundle. They're like, hey, what's really good against tanks? Like, hey, what about that dude we've actually been playing in Europe? Like, oh yeah, he is good. And then now they're all bringing it out. Now we get to see and evaluate how what Expect can do in this similar matchup, and if 1907 Fenerbahce can shut him down.
I mean, I think when you draft dominant lanes on top and bot, and you have the more prominent early game jungler in the Gragas, these are some things that G2 can really take comfort in, especially when you look at the second phase of bans here for 1907 Fenerbahce. They're focusing Expect, and they're still ending up with a somewhat disadvantageous lane. The big thing for them, though, is going to be all about the later game team fights. If you look at Cassio, if you look at Kog'Maw, supported by this Janna, as well as an incredibly strong frontline of Sejuani and Cho'Gath, that is somewhere where they could really dominate if they're able to get going. But G2 don't want to give them a chance to.
This is also an extremely potent Baron-taking team. Kog'Maw, Cassio, on top of a Cho'Gath as well. One small mistake from G2 could result in a very swift objective being taken down, so they're going to have to maintain good vision control around the top side of the map as they look to try and set themselves up for a strong Trundle and a strong Rise later into the game.
G2 Esports of the European LCS, 1907 Fenerbahce Esport of the TCL, both looking for a win here in Group C. Fenerbahce goes on to face Samsung Galaxy. G2 to RNG. Like we said, it's going to be hard out of this matchup to see who's going to be 1 and 2, but this win right here will help that cause.
Certainly will, and as we're getting onto the Rift already, my eyes are kind of drawn to the bot lane, as Sven's going to be starting with a Cull. And while that is, something that you can probably get away with in a lane like this, he's obviously not going really for a lane dominant style. It doesn't mean that he couldn't still achieve that, but going for something like a Doran's Shield or a Doran's Blade is going to give you more laning power. It's going to give you the ability to bully out your opponents even more so. This to me says either A, they don't think that they can actually dominate this lane and they're just trying to eke out the extra economy advantages with both the Cull and the refillable from Mithy. Those are some edges that they could get.
Slow movement towards the bot side, but more spread out than usual here just for the line of scrimmage. Nobody really expects too much to happen. The Raptor wards are placed up, so they might catch a glimpse of somebody walking that top side.
Now, what's interesting about these two teams is that G2's first game during the World's group stages, their eyes were focused very much on towards the top side. Expect played that Shen into the Cho'Gath, and we saw a lot of jungle attention from Trick. He went up towards top, he forced the flash out of the enemy Cho'Gath, and then he kept trying to repeat those ganks to get Expect into a favorable position. Whereas for 1907 Fenerbahce, they were playing much more towards the bottom side of the map. They wanted to try and shut Uzi down. And in the early game, they did a fairly decent job of it, but that was all because Crash had a good number of early kills when he was playing Italy. He's now being forced to play the Sejuani. He has to be more of a team fighter. He has to be more passive, which isn't really the style that we've been seeing from Crash during the playing stage.
I do agree you're not as aggressive and explosive as something like Nidalee, but you certainly can pull the trigger on these team fights. When you hit level 6, you have the ability to set up these initiations, and as we have seen, the masteries popped up. It is going to be the wind speakers from Mithy, so I think that this makes sense with what they are showing me from their itemization. This is something I've talked about in the past, but you're going with all these kind of more greedy defensive style setups as far as itemization, with the coin instead of a spell thief, with a refillable instead of 3 potions, with a Cull instead of a Doran's Blade. So when you go with the wind speakers along with that, you're saying, hey, we want to play defensive, we want to play scaling, and we're looking for our advantages later on.
Expected push to the turret here from Sven and Mithy as they go quite hard on the lane. Not giving a moment to stop here, trying to pile up on Pone and Pad and get that damage down as much as possible. It's going slow. 14-9 so far. See how much they can deny as it gets to the turret.
Now, many eyes will naturally be on the bottom lane. Sven and Mithy, somewhat the pride of Europe. Their bottom lane has been able to keep up with some of the best of them. And Patton, he did have an impressive playing stage, but it's very difficult not to have your eyes drawn towards the mid lane as well, because you have Perks, considered the king of Europe, as it were. You have to play in his lane kingdom if you really want to make a name for yourself within the region. And you're also going up against Frozen, who is considered one of the main carries of 1907 Fenerbahce. During the regular season, he acclaimed multiple titles, best mid laner throughout the region. He was considered MVP of the region as well. And this guy has been one of the better performers of the team and is now looking to make a name for himself on the international stage.
And he's even someone that, while he had limited performances in the LCK, he did perform well when he played. He's someone who has been able to perform not only in the TCL, but across the world, right? And he is bringing it now to that world stage, trying to show what he has. And so far, he's been very impressive.
Huge factor on that Syndra throughout the playing stages and really just showing that he can be a pivotal point for that team, allowing Thaldrin, captain, to make those calls and make everything go accordingly. Both teams kind of looking for that in the early game. The push in the bot lane still consistent coming in from Sven and Mithy, but they've been holding it quite good on the side of Padden and Japone. No real damage just yet.
Note as well how Expect, he's playing a little bit more reserved in that 1 versus 1. He doesn't want to run the risk of overextending. He realizes that there's not enough vision in the top side of the map, so he's not going to play the same sort of style that Alfaro had, which is very much in your face, knowing that he had a little bit more jungle support from Maxwell around the top side of the map. And once he completes his first item, which we will expect to be that Tiamat, that's when we can start to see Expect be a little bit more aggressive and maybe a bit of a gank up top from Trey.
And you can tell that a lot of the G2 game plan is about that top lane, just based on the way that the bottom lane is not trying to push their advantage. They're trying to play passively. It's going to be about expecting a side lane, because normally you would say if you have an exceptionally strong laning duo, you want to try to exploit that, right? You want to try to bully these guys, because the downside of this is that Patton and Japone are going to get to sit back, and they have pretty greedy starts here too. This is a Relic Shield start for Patton. They're going to be getting a lot of gold out of that, and if they can farm even or better against G2, that is going to be really nice for them and getting them towards the later stages of the game, getting them to that team fight stage where they've shown that they can be very strong.
It's like a wave clear here. G2 does not want much more time in lane as they back for the bot side. We'll see what items they come back with here. Just half on the call. They are forcing that thing to 0.
It's actually a really good job by G2 tracking where the wards had gone down. That pink position right there that Trick just dropped is not a normal spot, so they had a good idea of where those 2 wards were. They're able to clear them both out, and Expect.
Great dodge there. He's going to be able to get himself just out of enough passive hits. No crowd control there. Perks just gets off the ground so he can keep himself safe.
And G2 now have information as to where Crash is immediately. Trick gets a bit of deep vision down onto the bottom half of 1907 Fenerbahce's jungle, and then he's going to go back to base and path accordingly. It looks like towards the top side of the map. Maybe he wants to try and get something for Expect, or maybe just relieve the pressure so that Expect can go back to base and spend a bit of that juicy gold.
And Sven, because they had the push, was able to get off the earlier buy, so he's come back with the BF, and they're going to continue trying to shove in Patton, try to keep him around on this Relic Shield, not allow him the time to actually go back and make a purchase. With the kind of scattered back timings, though, from G2, perhaps they can actually push it out. They know that Mithy just went back to base, and it may give them the confidence to try to reset this lane.
I find it interesting what supports decide to go for. Japone says Aether Whip, damage, speed, and then you see Heal Shield for Mithy. Idle. Always a choice. You can go with either. He still has the ability to put out that damage from him.
Very early armor boots coming out from Pan as well. Respecting the damage output from G2, also showing respect towards Expect, who will be a big threat later on into the game. For the time being, it looks like G2, they're going for a dive top. Bear in mind, Thaldrin, he has not gone back to base yet. G2, they just want to try and delay that for as long as possible. Expect even TP back into lane so that he can already get a bit of extra damage down onto that tier 1 at the top.
Slow going for Crash. Just waiting for Frozen to slither on over. Low on mana there from getting pushed in, so he'll be Good to farm now in that mid lane. It resets. Bot lane still getting pushed in here, and it does start to have a little bit of a gap, 64 to what could be about 55 here after all cleaned up. We'll start to see that stretching a bit for Sven here. The backs are going to start mattering after this call.
And the turret pressure really can create a lot of issues for Fenerbahce. If you're constantly drawing Crash down, if he gets to the point where he has to come down and be that supporting force to keep that turret alive, it gives G2 a lot of flexibility to make plays on the other side of the map. And while Rise may not be favored in this 1v1 matchup, Perkz is doing great, and he's on a champion who can utilize the Realm Warp to get out there on the map, to look for roams, to try to attack a side lane where they have their advantages.
I think we've seen some pretty impressive Rise ultimates this tournament as well. Their ability to quickly move your entire team from one location over towards the Baron, or maybe even move a minion wave from one place to another. But it can also be used early on to set up for a flank down into the bottom lane. We can see that Sven and Mithy continuing to push onto this tower. It's now at about 50% of its HP. And all you need is a very quick ultimate from Perkz to then maybe fall behind the bottom lane of 1907 Fenerbahce, maybe get yourself a couple of early kills, and they're already setting up a few wars to prepare for this potential dive.
And Trick just wants to come. Even if you zone them off a wave, you allow yourself to get a few more hits on that turret. It's getting dangerously close to that place where an explosive charge is going to knock it down. So Fenerbahce have to push forward. They have to try to defend more aggressively, and that's putting them into these disadvantageous trades.
Haddon takes a good hit here. You can see Trick hovering, saying, my team's a bit pushed up. Might have to get ready for this counter gank. Little does he know. Now Crash is just above him. A back and forth in the top lane. Ult still held by those top laners.
Perkz making the roam up, though. He has the Realm Warp, and they can go for this. Trundle ult is popped.
Just going to be in range. Expect getting a few chomps down himself. Takes a bite out of Crime, and the kill goes over. You expect in that top side, Trick and Crash meet each other in the jungle. Looks like Trick's going to waltz out of this one, knowing the other side of the map has the advantage.
This is actually so big, too, because Thaldrun is without his TP, so this gives so much free time for Expect. He can either bounce the wave and reset it for himself, or he can just get a tremendous amount of turret damage down with that Frozen Domain, as well as the Chomp resetting on that turret, and he may actually be able to knock down the first turret with some time up in the top lane.
And this is exactly what we wanted to see from G2, utilizing that Rise ultimate to make plays across the map. It's already going to set up Expect to be this massive side lane threat, going towards the Curl, taking down that first tower. 2,000 gold lead in favor of G2.
Yeah, and when you take a look at where that gold is, it's almost all in Expect, which is very disgusting. I mean, the fact that he has a Cull hero as well, by the time he cashes out, he got solo first turret gold in an advantageous matchup. He's building for the 1v1. He has a Cull. This is going to be so hard for Thaldrun.
And now you're looking at G2 to set their eyes on this bottom tier 2. All they needed to set up a bit of defensive vision to make sure that Sven and Mithy are not interrupted, because their eyes are dead set on taking down that tower and opening up the map even more.
And look at what Expect gets to come back to. Probably down to about 30 on his Cull after he gets to soak up all these waves. Thaldrun couldn't reach it to the turret. Like we said, no teleport back. That was a long walk for him. We'll see this all over again as Perkz started that roam quite early.
So the key thing you need to keep your eyes on is the Thaldrun Q. He's going to try and time his knockup to land just as Perkz arrives just a little bit too early, which means the Perkz does not get CC'd and is able to land the CC chain. Thaldrun doesn't even bother flying.
It's so tough. How often do you get to try that, right? It's like, I have Zanya's down now. Realm Warp into skills. Still working on that one. Even the pro is having trouble.
Now Crash is moving bot to try and alleviate some of this pressure, but he's immediately moving towards the top side because he knows that Sven and Mithy, they recognize this and they're just going to back off.
5-1-4. So 5,140 to 3,600. That's where that gold was, as you said, Azale. If you look at 20K to 17.8, just about 18. This guy is controlling the game. Money bags for Expect on this Trundle.
Yeah, I mean, Expect is like 1,700 gold ahead, and he's closing in on actually cashing out on that call. So this is going to be such a point of contention for 1907 Fenerbahce. Even if they have a great team fight, even if they could get a 5v5, they would always win it. Expect does not have to give that to you. He can create a tremendous amount of pressure in those side lanes. As long as he's able to draw multiple people to him and not die throughout the control of vision, you know, if they're able to actually combine Trick and him, and even utilizing Perkz to get in that jungle and get the vision, he's going to be able to stay safe, and he's going to be able to be such a pressure point for the G2 team.
And the thing is, for 1907 Fenerbahce, they're relying on the late game insurance of their composition. And while a team like Misfits may take the game slow and progressive, G2 are a little bit faster when they've gotten themselves a lead. They're much more rapid to push this lead and keep the aggression up, especially when you're on a roaming mid laner like Rise for Perks. This guy knows very well what to do with this lead, and I would not be surprised to see him flounder it as the game progresses.
So far, having a field day in the top lane. Wards are working out, so for the time being, we may be able to continue to push that advantage. All the wards for 1907 Fenerbahce on the bottom side of the map, which means hardly any wards are being cleared. That pink one's been alive for quite some time. They should know that the vision is denied on that one, but don't have the right to walk in their own jungle just yet. So 1907 Fenerbahce kind of sizing up how G2 is doing right now. Hope to see a fight from them with a bit of this forward vision.
I think if you're sizing up how G2 is doing, it's pretty damn well. This game is going really all in their favor. You have multiple calls on their team. They've gone for more of these kind of greedy builds. They have pressure on bot side. They have pressure on top side. They're already a few thousand gold ahead, and they're very, very close to knocking down that bottom lane turret. So next time they actually get it up to that turret, if Trick wants to go down there or Perks wants to make a roam down there, they can put on the pressure, knock that down, and then even look to start threatening something like a dragon, grab an additional objective there to really just extend their lead.
Teleports up for top laners. Ultimate down for Thaldrin as he's starting to chop down on a few minions. Has to figure out which ones are going to make him bigger, which ones he's going to need for the fight. Kind of pushing Expect out, but this is back and forth. Expect is pretty much playing a game of yo-yo here. He gets to go in and back out whenever he wants, having control of that lane, making it very hard for Thaldrin.
There was an opportunity there for G2 to play towards that red buff. Giving that objective over to Expect would have made that lane even more of a terror for Thaldrin, but instead they decide to back off because Perks wanted to spend his gold. No, he has decided to pick up the Abyssal Mask. A little bit of a variation from what we have been seeing, because a lot of the rises at this tournament have focused on the Rod of Ages. Yeah. But I have heard that, according to the math, the mask is a lot more optimal.
Yeah, I mean, you're only losing a couple % in damage, essentially. You're buffing up your teammates' damage, but also, I mean, I feel like a broken record in these games today because I'm talking about all the magic damage coming out from these teams, but it's even more extreme in this game, where Kog'Maw deals a lot of magic damage too. All of the damage coming out of 1907 Fenerbahce is heavily magic damage, so the Abyssal is going to make him massively more tanky. It's exceptionally efficient, and Expect really can go even just straight adaptive and Spirit Visage and be almost unkillable.
Realm Warp is there if they did want it. Obviously just lane pressure. They didn't know where the rest of the team of 1907 Fenerbahce was, and the Rift Herald gets called out. A final shot, and that turret is down.
3 towers now in favor of G2 Esports. They've been able to quickly take the bot, using the Rift Herald to take mid, and Sven and Mythia continuing to push bot. And there's no answer right now from Fenerbahce because they've sent that bottom lane up to the mid.
I mean, Fenerbahce kind of overcompensating in their response. They sent everyone over to try to answer this turret that is already effectively gone. That allows G2 to create more pressure on the bot side. They're not losing anything elsewhere on the map, and really everything is going so well for them. This is something you rarely see. Sven actually completes 2 items without even having brown boots yet.
Oh my word, 16 minutes. Infinity Edge, Static Shiv.
That's the 2 items. But if he can get in range, it's gonna hurt.
That's the Cole man. He's just like, I don't need to look good in my boots. I got swords for days.
He's got whimsy boots. He just has to stay near
That's
Mithy.
True, yeah.
Also buffered rocket jump, pretty good. Looks like they're going to be able to pick up this Drake. Nice and easy. G2 gets a little bit more speed behind them with a Cloud Drake locked down here at 16.5 in. Everything in their favor. They have not lost a turret. They have not died, and they are controlling the lanes quite nice.
I mean, Expect is 2,000 gold ahead of Thaldrin right now. He's such a strong point in this game that, honestly, I don't even think he would lose a 1v2, or at least he can disengage a 1v2 if it's Crash and Thaldrin. They don't really have enough damage to take him down. I mean, you can simply ult the Cho'Gath and try to disengage with your pillar. At this point, it's really hard to see what 1907 Fenerbahce can do other than forcing on the rest of the team. They have to find a pick on someone like Perks or Sven, and a lot of that just means, well, Crash, you better engage, because he's the only one who can.
The thing is, though, is that Fenerbahce are now being split apart onto all 3 lanes, because remember, Perks He doesn't have the TP. He has decided to go for the cleanse. But now that he's level 13, his ultimate has that extra bit of range, and he can move very freely between both bot and top and mid, and he just has that additional bit of freedom to just help G2 apply map pressure all across the board. So things are going to get even harder if 1907 Fenerbahce don't even have the option of just grouping up and forcing a fight.
And they got coupons left and right. Spectre Cowls, you got merch treads coming in. Let's buy them in bulk. Might get a discount. That's the thing for G2. Magic resistance right now, as you were saying, is down. 1907 Fenerbahce is only going to have a harder time using any of this AoE damage to find a dead member of G2 Esports. Blue is now going to be taken. They start to deny the resources of 1907 Fenerbahce as they start to deny the jungle.
And when you have this kind of a lead this early on, that's really the best play that you can do, because Baron hasn't even spawned yet. You've taken all the tier 1 towers, so you just want to deny as much as possible from your opposition. Keep them forced underneath their tier 2s, steal away all of the jungle camps, and just make their life as difficult as possible while continuing to build your lead and extending that vision. So if one member oversteps, they make that one misplay, you go for the pick, and you can snowball it into another big objective.
See if they try to use these level 11s as well, clicking in through Sven and Mithy. Still have a little time before that happens, as well as Crash and Trick. Trick just actually hitting that second ultimate level, so they may be able to flex the power a little bit around the map. Backing for now gives 1907 Fenerbahce time to set up that vision, get their pink wards down that they can protect, and possibly stave off this pressure in the side lanes as G2 runs down the mid.
I mean, it really does just feel like an exact repeat almost of the last game, right? G2 does not have to play this game quickly because the onus is all on Fenerbahce. Eventually, Expect is going to bleed you out. He's going to take your turrets. He's going to be split pushing. He will get those advantages. It's just a matter of time. So it's 1907 Fenerbahce who really have to be able to get things done.
This could be that big play. As close as they get to the base, they could easily round warp right back to Baron and make this an even bigger play. Almost a kill on Japone. They get a good shield down onto him. Monsoon is also used. So flashes and ultimates to get themselves out alive of their own jungle. This vision also depleted. That was just placed by 1907 Fenerbahce.
Trick probably didn't need to flash for that play. He's not going to have it available now if they want to try and make another engage happen later, but they get what they came for, which is the red buff. Fenerbahce are struggling in their own half of the map, and this is what we were just talking about. Ideally, if you're G2, you want to just be stealing away the camps, getting that deep vision down, and Fenerbahce are just trying to do their best to hold on to their vision line, make sure that G2 aren't stealing everything away, but they're just too far behind to really contest.
And if we could swap over to 1907 Fenerbahce's vision here for a second, they have no forward vision whatsoever, right? This is a very dark and scary map for them. Nothing across the midway point. Just now they get one ward in the river. It's almost entirely G2's map, which is very, very concerning when you're getting to this point in the game where G2 could knock down a Baron, or they can even control the vision and then utilize the Rise ultimate to go straight to that Baron.
Completely side note, just a little bit thing to notice as well. If you look across the farm for G2, 228, 228, 219, all above 10 CS per minute throughout this game. That just goes to show how much control G2 have had during the laning phase. And part of the reason why 1907 Fenerbahce were considered the underdogs, we thought that maybe they could try something a little bit innovative, go towards that Crash style of playing an early game, interesting jungler that can be difficult to predict like the Nidalee, but he decided to go for standard. And if you play standard against G2, well, you're playing into their wheelhouse.
G2 as well. The freedom to move around. You see Sven by himself kind of roaming in the jungle. Good distance from Trick. They have so much control, as we were talking about. They also have the ability to make mistakes if they even get into a troublesome situation. 1907 Fenerbahce has quite a bit to work back from, and G2 knows that. Poking and prodding here to find where they find the next opening, because Fenerbahce is playing quite scared at the moment, so G2 isn't finding those engagements.
While there is still time for 1907 Fenerbahce, I'm always considering that late game, you know, the true full power of the team fight. Cogmore, we saw from Misfits, can do a lot of damage, especially to a relatively squishy Trundle, unless he obviously steals away all your stats, which is always a little bit annoying. But you also have the Cassio, and the thing that we haven't talked much about is Frozen. Level 14 has been keeping up very well with perks, already completed 2 of his 3 core items, of the Rod of Ages and the Morellonomicon, this Cassio is still a big damage-dealing threat that G2 has to respect.
He certainly is, but one of the concerns for me is that you're kind of delayed even more as 1907 Fenerbahce because you need Void Staff. You need these kind of items when you're so one-dimensional with your damage that G2 is just able to build magic resist across the board. I mean, Berg Treads on the top 3 members of the map. You have an Abyssal Mask, you have a Spirit Visage completed. You already have Trick working towards what is likely an Adaptive Helm or perhaps a Spirit Visage of his own. And I actually think that Expect going towards what is very likely, you know, either a Frozen Heart or it's an Iceborne. I think that's kind of a mistake. I actually think that you can itemize so heavily towards magic resistance that they almost can't touch you because you can steal armor anyway from Thaldrin, and even the Kog'Maw is dealing a significant portion of magic damage. So to me, Adaptive Helm is just so ridiculously efficient when you're going up against a Cassio, when you're going up against a Cho'Gath, and even against that Kog'Maw, that not building it is kind of a mistake, though I really don't think it's going to matter too much this game.
Moneybags. He's doing whatever he wants. Just gets to build it. I mean, if you have a game as Expect is in 2.2 gold, 2.2 thousand gold for your lane opponent, he's having a pretty fun time stretching the limits right now of what he is able to do. You see 10.2 there to 8.1 as it actually even grows a little bit. We'll see where they can go from here. Control could be over the Baron. They could always pull 1907 Fenerbahce into a possible fight, but there's a lot of AoE. There's a Petrifying Gaze into Sejuani ultimate and Ruptures that could allow Padden to open up the game for them. G2 has to find that right opening.
Sven yet to even upgrade his tier 2 boots though. Still going to stick to just getting as much damage as he can, getting as much attack speed as well. Sven already hitting 3 items in 24 minutes. Like, that's just scary, man. I feel like Tristana should not be this strong at this point in the game, but it's all come down to the pressure that they had in the early game.
And that's what happens when your opponents are not actually contesting anything,
yeah,
right?
You're right.
You're having across the map 3 lanes that are just allowed to free farm, and you're allowing elite players from G2 to actually do that. And when you allow them to free farm, when you allow them to go for things like a Cull in the top lane, as well as on the bot lane marksman, and then just be not pressured whatsoever, they're going to be above that 10 CS per minute mark. They're going to be taking down your turrets. They're going to be cashing out on that Cull and getting so many gold advantages.
Cashing in on that tier as well, around 680 for Perks, 580 for Frozen as Expect stealing Thaldrin's everything with Subjugate, just walking away.
Ninja Tower, right? Like, that's insane.
What, you guys saw a tower there?
Expect was basically acting as the minion right there, stealing all the stats away from Thaldrin, soaking up all the shots. Could this be the engage?
There's the hit. They don't have much for Sven to get out alive other than a shield. He's forced to flash. And it looks like they're not able to get the kill, which really relieves pressure. Sven still has Rocket Jump, and they can look at this one more time.
I believe that is the first summoner spell that 1907 Fenerbahce have been able to force from G2 this game. On the very least, they're now looking to try and make this
a win.
A win is a win. But
take it away.
1 kill to 0. It's not been a very bloody game. G2 often don't find their wins through kills. They often prefer to play through the map, through the vision. And they're just slowly bleeding Fenerbahce out.
Yeah, and I mean, although Fenerbahce is not losing a lot here, they're losing the jungle, and that's the biggest problem, right? If you're able to evenly hold the map and farm your jungle camps, farm the waves, then G2 playing slowly like this does not necessarily give them a big advantage. But the fact is, G2 is farming both sides of the jungle. They're getting the minions as well, which is slowly extending the gold. They're also the ones pressuring, getting the towers, and 1907 Fenerbahce has not really been able to put any significant damage on a single tower across the map. They have not really been able to get anything done, so there's more and more pressure on them to look for a fight before they get to this point where it's just kind of out of their reach.
But there's still the one hope, the one thing we always look at for 1907 Fenerbahce.
We scale in.
It's the Padden team fight. The legend. During the play-ins, he made a name for himself in those team fights. 3v5, remember? It was Padden, Japone, and Thaldrin that came together and were able to dismantle their opposition. But obviously playing against G2 is a bit of a different ballgame when it's team fighting, but still, that's the player you're looking at. That's the guy you're watching to potentially be that carry that can maybe keep the team alive.
Absolutely, because in the early game, we sometimes think, are they going to play the crash game? That's what they had in their first game, and it was much closer. This time, it seemed like a reserved crash game, so it might have to come up to Padden. It has to come up to that scaling because the early game hasn't been there for 1907 Fenerbahce.
And we have to remember that Crash was this emergency sub for the team. And the jungler he's replacing was actually known for playing extremely passively.
Yep.
They wanted to play defensive. They wanted to play this playstyle, and that's what they're having Crash kind of slot in for. So he's trying to emulate that. And the question to me, when you have this sort of a team comp, though, is even though there is some powerful team fighting, you have to delay for so long, and it's not like an SKT-style disadvantage where you're like, oh, but they have the Rakan and G4, they have this powerful engage if they can just find it. There's not really much of that.
Realm Warp again, right onto Crash, and it looks like that is going to happen. Japone very low. Monsoon goes down with both summoners, so that means they do not have much siege protection left. Double Buster shot back. Frozen and Pads are put right into the redemption of Japone. Here comes Thaldrin waltzing in from the right, but there are minions on the top side ready to bash into the turret if G2 is ready.
G2 find a successful pick, utilizing the Rise ultimate once more to get themselves another advantage. Second kill of the whole game, and now they're going
over
for
the
a
wall.
fight.
Straight over, could be big hits for Thaldrin, but he's going to be able to take a lot before he goes down. That means a long haul for the fight. Does Padden have a chance to sit and fire? He has to keep fighting, and the damage is not able to come through. Looking for Frozen and Padden to still do big damage here, and G2 knows that can happen.
I actually think G2 would have killed Thaldrin had Sven stuck around. I'm not sure if they realized how much damage Perkz was going to be able to put out there, but they're straight onto the Baron. Crash has respawned, but they don't really have any vision here. They need to check in. They have to contest this.
Going slow, Japone trying to use the sweeper to get himself a bit of vision. They feel good that that's been pulled off of. Crash now able to enter into this fight, and he could come around that top side.
Remember, one of the big strengths that 1907 Fenerbahce's comp has is the Baron taking power. You have the Cho'Gath ultimate, you have the Casu who does it incredibly quickly. You also have the Kog'Maw there too, as another fight might be kicking off. TP coming in from Expect.
Yeah, they're looking to get flanked, and Fenerbahce is actually split up here. They could be in trouble.
Dropping the minions in the mid wave, so they make sure that G2 may not have something to push, but they'll go right for Baron if they can take the fight. Thaldrin goes down. The 50-50's only with Crash now, and the Smite. Expect stands tall on the front line as Padden tries to find a few more shots.
Padden has got to be so careful as well because Trick still has his flash, as does Expect, and there are no summoners on this Kog'Maw, so if he mispositions even one time, he can get engaged on.
Perkz on the other side of the wall. Man mode for him as he pushes Crash over, and we'll see if Crash can get himself back in. The flash is up, so he can pretty much deny any of that positioning, but over the wall goes G2 for Crash, and the Baron will go into the hands of G2 Esports. Trick and Mithy to do the rest of the damage there. Hopefully
There
they
is no
have
damage.
enough damage there, getting a little ahead of themselves. Overzealous. G2 goes for too many kills and almost lose their team doing Baron.
So G2 finally get themselves the Baron. 1907 Fenerbahce will be able to return with an Infernal Drake at the very least, using the TP as well to secure that one. Oh, as they do know, there is a bit of vision
wants
from
that
G2.
stack.
Yeah, he wants the stack, man. He's got to come out with the bright side. But G2, very clean Baron take. Still on track. Ooh, they were super close to the perfect game, but then they lost the Drake as they'll. We're running through this
TP's
replay.
for, and once again, they'd already gotten the initial pick, and Perkz doing a good job. Go over the wall, zone out Crash. They also have a big commitment to actually take him out, making sure that it can't be a 50-50. Perkz does a really good job, I feel, of utilizing these ultimates to force the direction in which his opponents have to go and then actually cut them off the other way. So he throws the Rise ultimate to the right side, knowing that the only way out is for Cassio to flash up. He then is already meeting him there.
And now G2 with the Baron, but they're looking for mid, but here comes
on the
Bolt.
flank.
Righteous Glory, eyes on Sven on the back line. Crash straight to him, expecting Trick now in the front. Sven turns around to start firing, and that is going to be a dead Crash. Trick pops up Thaldrin, enough shots could be the end of him as Perkz enters from the side with a flash. And now, without blinking, they continue the fight. Padden and Sven 1v1, blasted back with a buster shot. And a Kathy, it won't surprise anybody on this one. G2's in the base.
Really good engage from Crash, but just too late into the game. G2 are far too strong, and they're going to go to a nearly perfect game against 1907 Fenerbahce.
Both teams coming in 0-1. There had to be a victor in the group, and G2 makes a bit of a statement for themselves here, climbing towards the top, looking for a 1-2 position here in Group C. They take down the final Nexus turret, and they will have the Nexus. 8-0, 32 minutes in. G2 take the victory over 1907 Fenerbahce.
EU 2-0 on the day, boys. That's it. We're back. We're coming for groups.
And you have to ask, no, I'm not going to say that. But either way, G2 turning in a good performance here. They can be happy about this one. Back-to-back wins from Europe. playing around the Trundle, I think, very well in both games. And if you weren't thinking the Trundle was going to be a big part of the tournament after the Misfits game, I think you have to be really recognizing the power of this pick now, even if it's just something that's changing how people play in picks and bans. Because you can answer Trundle, but just not really with tanks. It's so hard in those 1v1s as someone like a Cho'Gath or a Maokai or even a Shen to fight this guy, but carries can actually answer him pretty well, so maybe you're starting to see things shift.
And is this now one of those champions that raises in priority on the ban
Absolutely.
list? Is this something you want to try and take off the board? But then what do you leave open in result of that? You know, like the pick and ban is becoming more dynamic as teams find answers to some of these established metas that we now have.
I mean, you're seeing a lot of Gnar out there as well, but you also don't want to Gnar against a Trundle in the first place. So it's going to be maybe the Lulu Janna, maybe you don't give one up, and maybe you start banning both to take the combo out of that.
But this has also got to feel great for G2 Esports, right? Because they had a bit of a disappointing performance against Samsung. They tried to match Samsung's style, and they struggled. This time around, they stuck to their own style, and they got a very clean win. And going up against a team like 1907 Fenerbahce, they were the expected favorites, and they wanted to just display their dominance, which I think they did a good job of today.
Absolutely. So to get some more insight on that G2 win, we are going to hand it over to Dash and the analysts.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. G2 pick up the victory. EU moves to 2-0 on the day. And as that's the case, we got to welcome Deficio, not Kobe. Wrong
Europe
Twitter
has a
handle
right.
there. Deficio.
I am European Kobe. It's fine.
There you go. Basically the same person, just continents apart. How do we feel about that victory crafted by G2 here?
I mean, they kind of did everything they were supposed to do. They were like, okay, we're going to win bot lane. We're going to win top lane. Perk's going to roam up there as well. And after they got the kills, they knew we had to wait for Baron, and then they waited for the Baron, they secured the Baron, and slow, yeah, but they didn't take any chances.
And this is the second game in a row here. We've got the Trundle pick coming through in the face of a Cho'Gath tank on the other side. So the prevalence of this pick, what do we think this might do to the meta, as was just discussed by the casters?
I mean, naturally, it does mean that there are other options for the Cho'Gath. That said, I still think it was a very risky draft to give away. The fact that you gave away Kog'Maw, Janna, Cassiopeia, and Cho'Gath, like that's a 20-minute Baron composition. If you ever lose control of that game, Fenerbahce's comp is terrifying. Fortunately for G2, they had control from pretty much minute one. They roamed early on the rise, they got the Trundle going, Snowball in his tower, Rift Herald, you already covered it.
Sure, the comp is terrifying, but their play style was just sit back and wait. Let's see what G2 does, and if they don't do anything for 40 minutes, then they will win at that point. And it doesn't inspire a lot of confidence to see somebody have no proactivity in their game plan.
Yeah, no, I really want to join in on that point, because if you are a Fenerbahce, you go into this tournament and you should very quickly realize, like, in terms of individual talent, you're probably going to be the weakest team. You also have to look at, like, you know, understanding how to play the map. Again, that's where you're going to struggle. So if you're just going to play super slow, super scaling, you're most likely going to lose every single game before we even get to that 40-minute mark. And I think they got to change it up a little bit. I would love to see more aggressive picks, and I know it's an Ardent Sensor meta. It's very difficult to do, but you got to gamble in the early game if you're Fenerbahce.
But you 100% have the tools to do that. They do have Crash as their emergency sub in the jungle. This guy, they call it Crash style. So they can either play like Move, play the very slow, play the Ardent Sensor, or they can unleash this guy, allow him to grab his pick like the Nidalee. Didn't find success on it the first time, but try, shake it up.
I think what fascinated me about this game was the fact that the G2 lead was born out of a single play. One single first blood in the top lane. You get that Trundle ahead, and so much result.
And watch the minimap here for Perks, because he's going to be the one that solidifies this. So he's coming up. He's already freed in mid lane, and he's going to realm warp his way up here while pushing out the way, forcing Thaldrn back. Doesn't even have a chance to burn his flash. And while he does miss the Rupture, he's already down for the count. And that's going to lead for a 10-minute first brick for this Trundle, and we're going to get to see the gold graph, and it was just all G2 from then on.
Exponential from that point onward. You know, having control of the top lane, we saw the first brick go down very soon after that. Total control of the Rift Herald as a result, while the bot lane is winning that 2v2 on their own. Pretty soon you've got the entire outer ring of turrets down in the face of 1907 Fenerbahce having nothing to their names.
And actually, one of the things that I think is starting to develop as kind of like a subcategory of the Ardent Sensor meta is Cole as a really solid item. So Sven started it in the bottom lane. He's not going to die to Janna. You might as well cash in on a little extra individual gold for yourself forget about the support. And in the top lane, the Trundle, you're wondering how it's going to shake up the meta. Well, Trundle can get a pretty significant lead into these tanks because he can itemize that item. A tank's not going to go cold for his own build, whereas Trundle can start getting that lead and enable a snowballing split pusher to have some success.
Final points, Deficio.
Well, another thing we're also seeing now with the European teams bringing out Trundle is these picks that can beat some of the late game scalers in the laning phase without being useless later on, because Trundle is still good in the late game. Same for like the Lulu, Tristana in the bot lane. So it's not just about going 40 minutes now. You can actually also play for strong laning phase.
A solid win for the European squad. That's going to do it for us now. Let's send it over to Shox and hear from G2's mid laner.
Thank you very much, guys. I am talking to Perks indeed with a fantastic Rise. We should also make a rhyme out of that. Community, go. Anyway, Rise, Perks, congratulations on that victory. If you'd have to think of how your confidence level was yesterday after that Samsung game, and then after this one, where are you guys at right now? How confident are you that the next games are going to go well?
Well, when we lost to Samsung, we actually had some early game advantage, but we misplayed our early game plan in general, like jungle pathing and which lane should we focus. Also, we had that kind of snowbally draft, so if we don't snowball, we are just bound to lose. And their champions, the two items, which were Talia, Varus, and Cho'Gath, are just so strong they can just force Nash and end the game. So there was really not much we could even do there. They had a stronger draft and a lot easier to play draft, and they just snowballed and rolled over us. I think our confidence was still fine. Like we weren't depressed or stressed or whatever. We were actually pretty calm and collective, and we figured out. Like I feel like every day we are figuring out meta more and more. We know exactly what champs we want to play and where, and the meta is soon like figured out, and our play is getting better too. So I think we have a pretty good chance.
And improving day by day. You talk about the meta. We saw Sven building Call. Obviously, it's the Ardent Sensor meta. Do you feel that all those things are playing in your favor? Is that something your team can work with?
I think the meta is pretty good for us right now. Like we've always been pretty good at playing mid-bot style, mid-bot carry, and this is like just the kind of meta. It's Ardent Sensor and tanks on both top and jungle. So I think this meta is really good for us right now.
Obviously, yesterday you didn't have the best performance versus Crown. That must have been quite tough for you. But where do you feel you're at and your level? Is it MSI Perks?
Well, I don't know what it means I didn't have best performance versus Crown. I guess he carried the game alone, but I don't think it was to me. I don't think I did anything particularly wrong. They played a lot better as a team, and he played his champion very well, of course. But I think my level right now is pretty good. I'm very confident, and I'm one of the better mid laners at this tournament, and that it's all about how anyone performs at the end, you know? And I believe that after I gained so much experience of participating in every tournament for the last 2 years, my experience will come in handy, and I will be a very strong performer this year.
All right, fantastic. We're looking forward to it. Thank you very much, Perks. Congratulations on the first victory for G2. We're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll have the Samsung Galaxy up versus RNG, so don't go anywhere.
Sven turns around to start firing, and that is going to be a dead crash. Trick pops up Thraldred. Enough shots could be the end of him as Perks enters from the side with a flash. And now, without blinking, they continue the fight. Patton and Sven 1v1, blasted back with a buster shot.
Someone flash on them, someone flash on them. Okay, it's fine, it's fine. I'm coming. Oh! I can't see you.
Back. Go. Nice. Come in. We can
Nice. No, they got Drake.
Oh, man.